Hello, good morning. I think it's afternoon actually, but we're going to work on the file folder note junk journal that I showed the flip through of here a couple weeks ago. I had lots of people ask me for the tutorial, and so it takes a little while to put one together, and I am working on this. It's probably going to be about 4 parts, so please make sure to check back. I've got it laid out where each part is not too long, but that it does take a little bit to do each part. Let's try to go through some of the things you're going to need. Besides tools, we are going to want a few sheets of different colored cardstock or paper. It doesn't really matter. This is more for decorating the signatures and working with the signatures than it is for actually constructing the outside of the journal. You're going to want a file folder, of course. Now this is the extra long file folder. It is let's back up a little bit here. The extra long file folder, so that you have a little bit more space. The standard file folder doesn't give us enough room to make the pockets on the inside. I have a little bit of this is not really cardstock, it's not really chipboard. It was the cover off of a pad of paper. You could use a piece of the file folder that we might cut off if you wanted to. I like to use this just because it's already pre-cut for what I use it for, and so it just makes it easier for me, and in a few minutes I'll explain why more. This is Tyvek. It's T-Y-V-E-K, I think is how it's spelled. They make this in different kinds of products. I happen to have bought a whole roll that you use as house wrap. It comes in a roll, but you can also get mailing folders at the office supply store, or reuse a folder from the post office. Not folder, envelope. It comes in envelopes. You're going to want a little bit of elastic that does the closure on the outside. You're going to want a couple of eyelets. You could just put it through with hole, but I use eyelets. Eventually you're going to want some cording to sew in your signatures, paint, decorative paper, that kind of thing. So let's get started, and I'll try to explain this as I go. Hopefully you can see everything that you need to see. Let's see here. Okay. When I do something, I usually, let's back this up just a little bit more. Okay. There we go. I usually create a template. It's just the way I do things. I like to know exactly the measurements that I've used in the past, and that helps me to make a second one if I want, or do a tutorial if I want. I taught specialty sewing classes for years, and I always try to make myself a template and lay out what I'm doing, so I have measurements. The first thing we're going to do is find the ridges in the file folder. So this file folder normally comes folded like this. It's the way it goes in the file. Now, if you look at the bottom, there are 3 little marks in a file folder, and that is so that the file folder can expand and get fatter. what we're going to do is we're going to find the mark that's not folded. It's already scored, and we're just going to bring that file folder and fold it on that mark. That gives us sort of a bottom, but that's the spine of our journal. And if you know, there's two more marks in here. You want to make sure you use the outside widest two marks. Then we're going to cut a piece of cardstock or something. We're just going to reinforce the spine. That's the plan. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a piece that is roughly 5/8 of an inch by a hair shorter than 9 inches. And we're going to put this in here. If you see the cardstock, I'm going to flip it over so you can see it real well. And this is just maybe a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch shorter than 9 inches. And it's 5/8 of an inch wide, and that way it fits inside the file folder spine area. Okay? Now what I do is I take glue or Mod Podge or matte medium, whatever you want, and I put a good layer of that down. I put my spine in, and I lay over a piece of Tyvek, and I Mod Podge the whole mess down so that I have a piece that's finished just like this. Okay? I didn't want to have to wait for things to dry, so I got it set up where this one's already dry. If you know, you then have to come back in here and refold your folds. So that it's ready to work with. But by putting this piece in now, getting it nice and glued, you've got your spine reinforced, and when we're going to go on and decorate it. Now, there's two options here. You can decorate it or you can cut it first. And what I do, it depends on how I'm going to decorate it. If it's going to be an all-over design like this one, I decorate the whole folder, because that way I can use the parts and pieces I cut off. Okay, and I decorate both the inside and the outside. It's completely decorated. Now, if you're going to decorate it where the design, the cover design is something specific and you need to know where things are going to lay, then you're going to want to cut your piece and fold it and score it first. By doing that, I could see where my spine was, where everything is going to fold, and how my front cover will look. So it all depends on what you're doing for your cover design, whether or not you trim it first or second. I just happen to like the little pieces that are leftovers to decorate my insides of my junk journal. So if I'm going to do an all-over design, not cutting it first makes it easier for me. Then the next thing we're going to do, and I'm going to do it on this white, on this unpainted one, because that way you can see it better. If I do it on the one that's all covered with design, it's hard to see my cuts and score lines. So I'm going to fold this folder up like it was originally. And I'm going to get out my cutter. And if you've got a big guillotine cutter, that works real well, but this one is fine for me. Now, another thing is I've been using the file folders with the tab that's up here on the upper, well, it would be on the left of your file folder, but it's at the top. You can use one in the middle, you can use one at the bottom. it doesn't really matter. But what I would tell you is that when I fold my flap over for here, I wanted it to come over. So think about that when you go to cut off the piece you're going to cut off, because we are going to cut some of this off. Oops. See, I just told you and I just started to mess up. So we're going to cut this at 13 1/8 inches. Why it had to be an 1/8 inch, I'm not sure, but that's where it came out. So, all right. Now, like I said, if you were cutting the already painted one, you would be having these little pieces left over. So I'm going to cut. Now, I also have to flip it over because my cutter does not cut all the way through. And I go back to 13 1/8. Need to push this down. Make sure that your file folder is laid over and folding correctly and all that, because we have just played with it. And we're going to cut it off. And of course, because I said that, I didn't cut it off cleanly. So we'll just fix that. Sorry about that. It never fails when you're doing something in front of someone that it does not do it right. There we go. Okay. So now we have cut off the bottom. And that is the piece that if you wanted, you could have used a piece of this 5/8 of an inch to cover up your spine if you had wanted to do that. Then, the next thing to do is to get our score lines in. We need to, let's do this one. We need to get the pocket that folds up and the pocket that folds in all scored into position. So, we are going to score this at 9 inches from the top. Oops. And you might ask why I didn't cut this with the scoreboard, and that is because I cannot get 13-inch mark on this scoreboard. This is something new. I haven't had it very long. Everybody uses them, but I'm still getting used to it. So we're going to score this very carefully at 9 inches. And to me, it seems backwards. I don't know exactly why, but since I'm right-handed, if I was left-handed, I'd think it would be easier to use. But since I'm right-handed, it always seems like the score line is going backwards. So. And it scored pretty well, but I'm just going to double score, just score it again on this side. It helps folding it up. So now I have this scored where this will fold up. Okay? Now we need to get the flap that is going to fold over the top scored in. And what we're going to do is we're going to score it, we're going to measure it from this fold right here. So what I do is I fold it on that fold. Okay, so in the midst of my recording, for some unknown reason, I lost several seconds because the camera shut off and I had to start over again, and we were missing pieces. So I had just scored at 9 inches for this flap that folds up this way, and I was just talking to you about how to score for this flap over here. Because I don't have another file folder prepared with this part, I'm going to just go on with a blank file folder. So we have our 9-inch score for the pocket folded up there, and I was talking to you about the fact that at this short piece we need to score at 5 3/4 inches. So I am going to put this piece right here, this little fold right against the bar, and I am going to score this at 5 3/4 inches right here, like so, all the way down. Oops, well, it helps if you score straight. 5 3/4 inches. Now then, we will have our flap, that is, like so, and we have this little part right there. So we have our fold here at 9 inches from the top, and our fold here at 5 3/4 inches from the left-hand side of the spine. So it folds in like so. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut out this little section right here. We're just going to cut it out. Like so. And that's where we were when my video picked back up. So now we have this piece. It's folded like this. It will fold in like this. And, oh my. And if we had painted it ahead of time, this is where we would be. Okay? And we're going to talk about what goes on next in the next section of the video that I have already finished. So let me see now if I can edit this. Thank you. Okay, so I have no idea why that cut out. I'll have to try to put things back together again. Sorry about that, and I'll have to try to edit it. I'm not sure if I know how to do that, so we'll see what we can accomplish. So what we were talking about is the fact that if with this flap up, this flap in, this is my front cover, my spine, and my back cover that rolls around. Okay, so that is where we stand with this one. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is I happen to like this edge in my journal covered with something that's it's just easier if this edge doesn't get frayed out so fast, because that pocket's, you know, you start sticking stuff in it, it's going to take abuse. So I'm going to cover this edge with washi tape. And to do that, I'm just going to put the washi tape halfway on one side. Oh, good. It's not going to stick. There we go. And flip it over. And I can trim it off. Okay, now I use my sewing machine because I happen to like to sew on it, If you didn't want to sew on it, that's fine. You can always put a little extra glue under your washi tape if you're afraid it's going to come off. The idea behind it is that washi tape is just there to reinforce the edge of your project. Okay, so because we have this project all ready to go, I went ahead and did my zigzagging, and we're going to switch to a different folder so that you can see what's next. So rather than your wait on my doing that. Okay, now the next thing I want to do, just because it's easiest, is I like to put these eyelets in for the rubber band before I go any further. And it's just, you know, a personal preference. You can do it after the fact, but if they're in there, then you're not having to fight with it while you're doing other things. So we need our hammer. We need some eyelets. And I have two, let's go for little black eyelets. I have two little black eyelets. And these are little eyelets from the scrapbook store, or scrapbooking section. I've had them a long time. They're, you know, nothing spectacular, just eyelets. And I'm going to find the center. 4 1/2. There's my center. Now, this part is the spine. This between these two marks. We need our eyelets for our closure to be just outside the spine so that when we go to sew in our signatures, we don't have a problem. So, I want them centered in the book, which is about there. This is a centering ruler, by the way. It starts with 0, and then I've got a 4.5 inch mark here and a 4.5 inch mark there, so it makes it nice for centering things. Of course, there's no pencil over here. Oh, but here's a marker. So, I'm just going to put a little dot where I want to make the hole, and then I need another one on the other side. And we're going to put a board underneath. Please do not do this. Now, you might be able to use your self-healing mat, but I just use a board. This is a hole punch. It's designed to punch a hole specifically for the size eyelets I'm using. And I should have two little nice holes in there. Ah, didn't go through. I guess I was trying to be quiet and nice. There. Okay. Then we're going to insert our eyelets into the little holes. Now, I know this is kind of odd, but I have found that I can't hold these eyelets. My hands are too tiny. This is an ice pick. It's 100 million years old. It's probably an antique, and I use it for all kinds of things. And I just stick it on there, stick the eyelet in the hole, and then I can pull the ice pick out if I haven't shoved the ice pick in too hard. It just is easier for me to not have to try to hold those eyelets. And I can just push it and slide it out. Okay, then I'm going to flip it back over, being careful not to make the eyelets fall out. The next tool you use is just a little, it's a pointy thing. I don't know what you call it. And I just take it and wiggle it around in my eyelet. It just helps to round it. And then I take a little tap, tap. What we're doing is we're starting the flare on the eyelet. I know this seems like it's an involved process. Once you start doing it and aren't trying to tell somebody how to do it, it's very simple. Oh, this is actually the setter. This spreads out the eyelet pieces, and they turn into little sort of stars. Okay, and then at the end, you just walk them. Okay, so now we have two little eyelets ready for our elastic to close it with later. And I'm not going to put that in until after I put the signatures in, because it'll be in the way trying to sew them. So at this stage of the game, we need to sort of finish up our book. Now, this right here gets kind of in the way of this piece, so I usually trim very carefully, just a tiny little bit off at an angle. So I start just, I mean, this is less than 1/8 of an inch, and I just take it down at an angle. Okay, and I get this folded up. You see, it gives me a little bit more room to fold this over. And now watch this piece. If this piece is coming down past your edge, you want to trim that at an angle as well. This one, apparently when I cut it, I may have already done that. Okay, now this side, this is something that's kind of odd, but when you roll this over, if you notice right here, right there, that flap is wanting to stick out past the cover, and we don't want them to look like that. So I'm going to trim that one at an angle too. This one's a little bigger. Okay. Okay. So that when this is folded and wrapped around, it doesn't want to stick out. See, now it's tucked back in there and hidden. Okay, and that's what we want it to do. When we have this, we don't want it sticking out past there. We just don't want that look. So now we're going to do a little gluing, and I happen to like this Tombow liquid glue because it is so nice for to glue with, and it has a tiny little opening and it dries reasonably quickly. And the problem here is that we're going to glue, then we have to wait for the glue to dry, and then we're going to sew. So you don't have to sew, you don't, but that's what I'm going to do. So I am going to show you where you glue. I'm going to put just a little glue here. And you noticed I said a little. Now, if you're not going to sew this, you might want to use red line tape or double-sided sticky tape. I'm not going to use sticky tape because I want to sew it. So I'm going to fold this up. Then I'm going to put a little glue here. And a little glue up here. Now this is going to give me a couple of pockets, and that's my plan. Now, if you have painted this file folder, it will not stay like that without some clippies. So we're going to just clip where we've glued. And yes, I have a bunch of them. Let's put this one up here. Okay. All right. Now, whoops. We also need to glue this other side. The thing of it is that we want this to curve up here as it dries. We do not want it to dry, pull off. We want those two edges sort of to come together. So we're going to bend it up here like this. And frankly, the little clippies I use help me because they pulled it over. So, oops, would help if I glued it on the right side. We're just going to run glue on this piece. All right. Okay, and so we're going to pinch that all together. And like I said, we're going to put the clips on it so that it pulls it over. And that will help it to dry upside down. Fingers. Now, bulldog clips, they work real well. This just happens to be what I have. So, and I'm just going to pinch it closed. And like I said, you see how my clips are weighing it down? So, now, I can't really sew that until it's dry. But that is basically all you have to do to finish your cover. I will push these out of the way. Okay. What you're going to do is come back in here and you're going to sew this down. You're going to sew this other side down. And that finishes up your cover except for your little elastic.